Welcome to the Agility in Real Life podcast, Take 5 in Real Life. Now your hosts, Mike Studeman and Jeff Lee.
Hi, and welcome back to the Agility IRL podcast, Take 5 IRL. I'm Jeff Lee, one of the partners at Agility IRL.
And I'm the other partner, Mike Studeman. Welcome, everyone.
So, Mike, one of the things that often comes up when we are training people on Scrum, especially the sprint retrospective, we talk about psychological safety and the importance of it. Number one, make sure people have an understanding of what that is and why it's important, but some ways to help establish that in your Scrum events or other meetings. So, Mike, you want to take a shot at framing up what is this concept we're talking about, psychological safety?
Yeah, very important concept. I think it sounds very scientific or technical. I think psychological safety really comes down to how safe do you feel sharing your true opinion about how things are going in your team, with your process, with those most close that you work most closely with. I think the concept of psychological safety, Jeff, is really a concept that, well, it's been talked about in the Scrum world, more broadly the Agile world, for a number of years. It's really kind of having its moment right now outside of the Agile space. You're hearing companies that you wouldn't consider Agile, or maybe aren't even practicing Scrum, talking about psychological safety. I think the science around it, though, is quite interesting. I know you're familiar with the Google study. You've heard of Google, Jeff, right?
Yeah, I think so. I could Google that to verify, but I think
you could. Yeah, I see what you did there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Google did a study a number of years ago called Project Aristotle. And the purpose of Project Aristotle was to differentiate, or attempt to differentiate, what makes great teams great and what makes mediocre teams mediocre. Project Aristotle concluded that the differentiating factor between great teams and mediocre teams is one thing: psychological safety. Now, I know you and some of your coaching work have come across a number of teams, some of those that have great psychological safety, mm-hmm. and those that maybe don't. Do you want to maybe share with our viewers one example of a team that had really well-established psychological safety?
Yeah, so I had a client, funny you would ask that question, Mike, but I did have a client that
it's not like we set this up at all.
The client was transitioning from being a startup to a small corporation. And as a startup, they had gotten by, when there were production outages, things came up, hero culture, right? We've got a few people who know everything and they can fix all the things. And they're motivated, right? Startup people are super energized, which was fantastic. But they were scaling to a point where now we didn't have anyone who knew everything. Plus, there were just so many things going on. Nobody could be the firefighter for everything. And so what they were finding is they were having more and more production incidents that were taking more and more time. And their customer base was getting bigger and bigger, right? So a lot of factors that were really adding up, not in their favor. And so what they ended up doing, their chief technology officer decided that after every production outage, first, let's fix it. Let's take a couple days to breathe and figure out what went wrong. But then we're going to have a postmortem or a retrospective to talk about it, right? And so they had a postmortem that involved the team that had problems, their leadership, also peers, so everyone could learn from it. Also the chief technology officer, right? So this was a lot of people involved. It could go poorly, right? This
sounds that way. Sounds risky.
Yeah, it does sound risky. What they did is they started every one of these with the following statement: regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. This is known as the Agile Prime Directive from Norm Keith. And it really did a great job of setting the stage. It set the culture, and people were really open with what happened. They learned from it. And over time, their production incidents really went down. When they first started doing this, there were one of these meetings every week, sometimes two in a week. They still read that same statement at the beginning of every meeting, even though everyone knew it was coming. And it did a remarkable job for setting the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think we as Scrum trainers spend a lot of time talking about the Scrum values, particularly the Scrum value of openness and respect. I think the prime directive plays right into both of those. If you're not assuming positive intent, as the prime directive is sometimes summarized, it's really difficult to be open. If you don't have that psychological safety, it's really hard to improve.
Yeah. And then you don't have the culture of learning, right? You can't learn if things are getting hidden. So Mike, do you have any favorite acronyms around learning?
I do. We'll see if anyone recognizes the repeat call out here, because I know so many of you are watching multiple episodes, but fail, first attempt at learning. And to be clear, that's not my acronym. I didn't come up with that. I picked that up somewhere along the journey, but it's true. You're not failing in the truest sense if you're learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate learning. That goes along with celebrating failures, right? What did we learn from this? Let's celebrate that. Bring it into what we do, make it part of our culture to learn and be open and have that psychological safety.
Well, Jeff, I appreciate you making this environment safe for me to share my perspectives on psychological safety.
You as well, Mike. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
The product vision for Take5 in Real Life is to provide members of the Agile community with an idea that they can incorporate into their daily lives to make them more effective. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.